Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fourth of the museum's collaborative programming series, Charlotte Street Artist Virtual Walks. And hello to all of you who are out there in our Facebook audience. We are live streaming tonight, so we're so happy to have you all with us. I'm Krishan McKinney, the manager for audience engagement here at the museum, and I am joined by my wonderful collaborative programming partners. I'm going to start off with Christine Boutros, who is the former Grants and Awards Program Manager at Charlotte Street, and she is now the Associate Director of Learning and Engagement at the Honolulu Museum. You heard me correctly, Honolulu, as in Hawaii. So welcome, Christine.
Hi, Krishan.
And then back here at home with me in Kansas City, we've got the wonderful Hope Benson, who is Charlotte Street Manager for Outreach, and pretty much is my right hand when it comes to having all of the behind the scenes text for this incredible series that we're bringing to you. Tonight, we are very happy to have Kimmy Katana join us, also from Charlotte Street. Kimmy is the Jadell Family Foundation Curatorial Fellow. And then our guest of honor tonight, very happy to have musician, composer, performer, and 2020's Generative Artist Award Fellow, Stacy Busch. So Stacy, so happy to have you with us. Wonderful. And so it's so important that we have these kinds of opportunities for our Kansas City artists. It's so important that we show our support. They are what makes this city great. And so we're very honored to have Stacy here with us tonight to be able to share her story with us. So before we begin though, just a few housekeeping rules. I hope if you can go to our next slide, please. Wonderful. We have different speaker views available to you. So there is the speaker view, there's also the gallery view, and then we also have captioning. And so you can use captioning simply by clicking the CC button, which is located at the bottom of your screen. Hope, next slide, please. Christine will be managing our Q&A session. And just a reminder, when you are submitting your questions, to please either use the chat button. We're looking forward to having a great conversation with you, and Stacy and Christine, and we ask that everyone please be mindful this is a safe space, so we wish for everyone to be respectful when you are engaging with all of our guests and speakers. And now I'm going to turn it over to Christine.
Thanks, Krishan. Once again, it has been an absolute pleasure working with you on this program and with all the folks back in Kansas City. And well, I would like to start by bringing in Kimmy Kadada, the Jadell Family Foundation Curatorial Fellow, who is at Charlotte Street, to tell us more about the virtual walks and this partnership, and to also introduce our special guest.
Thanks, Christine. So Charlotte Street Foundation envisions Kansas City as an exciting home and community for contemporary artists of all disciplines and career stages, and to energize the city by making it an amazing place for artists to live and work. Our programs include an artist residency, providing free studio space to artists, and operating over 100 free events out of our new campus in Midtown, as well as grants and awards to fund artists' work. Our longest running program, the Visual Arts Award, started in 1997. Since that time, Charlotte Street has supported over 125 outstanding artists living in Kansas City through annual unrestricted cash awards distributed directly to artists. Currently, 5 awards of $10,000 each are awarded annually, 3 to visual artists and 2 to performing artists. Over the years, we've granted over $1 million to local artists in the community through these awards. From 2011 to 2015, Charlotte Street Artist Awardees were invited to lead individual walking tours at the Nelson-Atkins Museum, highlighting 3 or 4 collection works meaningful to them, followed by a presentation of each artist's work. This 2021 reboot of the program in a virtual format features the 5 Charlotte Street Award winners who were granted funding in 2020. This evening, we are so thrilled to introduce Stacy Busch, a composer and performer who uses her voice with electronics to build unique sound worlds. She is the founder and president of No Divide KC, an arts and advocacy nonprofit that creates artistic events for social causes. Most recently, Stacy composed and performed in a new production called When Time that was performed at the brand new Stern Theater at Charlotte Street. No Divide KC is also producing the second annual Queer Narratives Festival that will be coming up in August, so please keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions, do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and now we'll hear from Stacy.
Thank you, Kimmy. I'm so excited and grateful to be here with you all tonight and look forward to chatting a little bit with all of you. Thank you so much to the Nelson-Atkins Museum and also to Charlotte Street for putting this together, two of our great organizations for the arts in Kansas City. So I hope you enjoy the video and our chat, and go ahead and play that video, Krishan.
Hi, my name is Stacy Busch. I am a composer, producer, and performer here in Kansas City. I mostly work on electronic music and collaborating with lots of different types of artists. So I write shows for theater, for dance, concert hall music, and then I also perform as a solo artist as a live instrument and electronic setup. I moved here in Kansas City to do my master's degree in music composition at the conservatory. I was really inspired by the professors here, Jim Moberly and Paul Rudy. I was really interested in studying with them. Prior to studying music, how it actually all got started, I didn't. I have very little background in music, and I was actually a competitive athlete growing up and dedicated myself really exclusively to that. And so I did a bit of a 180 after I got into college, and the competitive athlete part unfortunately had a bit of a bad ending. And so I found myself in college really having an identity crisis and not really knowing what to do with my life. Having been so focused on something for my whole life, I really didn't know where to turn. And I ended up dropping out of college and luckily being accepted into a music program in Michigan, where I'm from. And I started music school and was very behind and didn't know how to read music and didn't really have an instrument to play on. And it was a whirlwind. And I think electronic music, I gravitated towards it because it was tactile and it was immediate in a way that, when you're studying composition, it's not always that way. A lot of what we're doing is, the written score is the art piece. And it's also an interesting medium because you're handing that score to someone to interpret for you. And so it's an interesting artistic practice where you're not actually working on the final product. You're handing this over, and there's not a lot of immediacy when you're studying that. You don't get a lot of feedback from musicians, and you don't often hear your music for quite a long time. And I loved being in the electronic music studio because I could sing and I could play things and I could record and I could hear it and I could have a lot more control over all of the variables and hear that right away. And I just really loved that process, and I was able to really hone my own voice through that and realize that a lot of what I do is kind of art pop, avant classical, singer-songwritery, and kind of melding all of those musical genres and influences into one thing. Personally, I'm really interested in the story of women. I'm really interested in the story of underrepresented, misrepresented communities. Something that happened to me, going through my identity crisis and getting into music school as I ran into some big mental health issues and addiction. And I got sober when I was 22 in the middle of music school. In fact, I went to rehab in between semesters and came back It's okay. We could laugh about it. I'm laughing about it. So, that has been a huge part of my work, is that perspective and that, seeing my life change and getting from that really dark point. And now I just have a much lighter approach, and I don't take myself as seriously. I like to take the work seriously, but not myself. And all of these things really came clear into focus to me about the path of an artist and how that relates to my life as a person, my mental health, and digging deeper in myself and clearing out all of that ego and problems that we all deal with as a human being. That's the stuff that I work on, to stay healthy, but that's also the work of an artist. One of the artists that really inspires me at the Nelson-Atkins is Rita Blitt, and in particular, she has a bronze sculpture called Icelandic Surge. And this is a smaller sculpture, and in fact, sculpture is not really something that she does a lot of, but my time in Iceland is so formative for me. I really respond to this piece and the movement of it. And what I think ties me to Rita and her work is her process also, because she is very, she doesn't think of this as precious, and she's very energetic and tactile. And so she often just kind of channels and then goes, and that's the piece. It's improvisatory. It's about having that energy inside you and then just letting it out, and what comes out is the piece. And I grew to understand that with my time in Iceland, in particular, the connection with nature and standing on those, cliffs, looking out at this immense water and the intensity of this landscape. It's fierce, and it's also like incredibly ancient. It's been there for thousands of years, and it just makes you think about yourself and about your connection to nature and how we're all here standing on this earth at this moment in time. And it's fascinating, the smallness of it and the bigness of it, the smallness of myself, but the big, the immensity that's inside of us all. And I think Rita really gets that with her work, and I really appreciate that. And this Icelandic Surge really speaks to me from someone who has spent time in that landscape and the movement and the energy that it portrays. I'd really like to talk about Judith Shea's storage piece, which is really inspiring to me at the Nelson-Atkins. Judith is an incredible artist, and I really relate to her because, first of all, I love women in the arts and women that are from a different generation than mine, where I can see who have forged this path for people like me and for other generations. And Judith started as a fashion designer, and that's what she went to school for, and she found that medium too restrictive, which is something that I really relate to, and I think kind of the journey of an artist is really about that. You have a plan, and maybe it's something that you've studied, but it's not where your actual work takes you. It's not where you feel inspired or motivated. And I like that she switched to sculpture to kind of be able to have more freedom in her work and what she was able to express. It's a really stunning piece, and I really find her work really valuable, and she's such a staple for this generation of artists.
Thanks, Krishan. It was really great to hear about your inspirations there, Stacey. So just waiting to see if any questions come through. But in the meantime, as we're hanging back to see if anyone who is listening in, and again, please feel free to use the Q&A box, or you can ask questions on the Facebook live stream as well. But I was hoping you could sort of dig a little bit more, Stacey, into why you decided to go back to school and study music. What drew you to that? Was there something that had sort of, inspired you back in elementary or high school or in your formative years? How did you come to that decision?
Yeah, it's very, yeah, interesting thing that happened. It was one of those things in life that I can't fully explain. And I didn't have much decision making in the process, in all honesty, but I was always fascinated by music. And my family had a piano in our home growing up. And I did take piano lessons, when I was 5 for a very short period of time before quitting. But I loved the piano, and I would go to it and, play notes. And my brother was older than me and took piano lessons, and I would sit underneath the piano and listen to him. And then that stayed with me throughout middle school and high school, but it was never something that I ever thought that that's something that I could pursue, or that this is kind of the life I studying journalism. And I stopped going to school, stopped going to class, stopped going to work, and mostly just stayed in my dorm in the basement, where there happened to be a practice room with a crappy upright piano in it. And I just played, and I think I taught myself kind of music theory in that time, and I was making melodies, and I was figuring out things about the piano, the pattern of it, and the way the keys were laid out, and why thirds stacked on top of each other, why does C and E and G, make a chord, and what if you put another third on top of that, and then you have a 7th chord? I mean, these are things now that I know, but at the time it was, discovering all of this stuff. And I also was writing lyrics that was really expressing, I through just playing that and listening to myself sing stuff and come up with stuff. And eventually I told my roommate, I think I need to study music. I think I need to go into music, and they were just like, yeah, obviously, but it was a shock to me. So that's a little bit about how it started. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're probably like, yeah, you're in that dark basement with the piano all the time. So made sense. Yeah.
Also, like, you're failing out of school. So
right. That's really interesting. So you had an affinity with, the piano, which is, a very percussive instrument as well. As time progressed, is there, did you develop other relationships with other instruments? Like, do you have a favorite instrument now, or, are they all just all good?
I think I missed the opportunity to be a percussion student. I do. Piano is a percussion instrument, you're right. And so it is about hitting things and, and hearing that sound. But what I love about percussion is that it's everything. It's anything that you can hit. And, I love large percussion setups. If you saw the piece that I just showed at Charlotte Street, I indulged in having a great percussion setup, and that gets me very excited. And when I go to shows and when I see what they have out there, I get pumped up, and I'm like, ready to have, it just gets me excited. And so I do love the vastness of percussion, and that it can be anything and so many different types of sounds. But I do really adore the piano, and I love just very like classical, the great masters of piano music. And I did study that in music school, and I still adore that. It has something that I think the timbre of it always is particularly magical and beautiful to me.
Mm-hmm. I do have a question here from Laura, and she would like to know, what is your collaboration process like? How do you go about it?
Sure. And I apologize if my internet is a little spotty. I'm not sure, but apologies if that's the case. But yeah, so my collaborative process it's tricky. I think part of growing up as an athlete and on a team sport, collaboration is essential to me, and performing with other people is what I truly love to do. And having that group energy and the feedback of other people and their energy and their ideas. And I love seeing the best out of other people, or if my music can bring something out of another person, that is what's so fulfilling to me, and why I kind of steered into more of a multimedia area compared to kind of concert hall music, and something more where I could collaborate with various kinds of artists. So I do like working large and working with dancers, working with writers, videographers, because I like having, all of those mediums have different language in a way, but we're all kind of talking about the same things. And I really enjoy having those kind of conversations where I can talk in my language and my ideas and hear someone else speak in a different language and have that moment of creation and differing ideas come to one kind of singular goal. So I guess the actual creative process, I do like to work with usually a choreographer or a writer, and have a small creative team. And then from that point, go to actors or dancers, musicians, performance artists, whatever that may be, and kind of create the larger performance from there.
So I just wanted to go back to this whole idea of being an athlete. And it's interesting that you're very much a collaborative musician and wanting to work with all these.
Christine, I think the weather is wreaking havoc all over. You are frozen.
Maybe this is an interactive piece right now.
I guess so. She's going to be asking about your athletic career. And Christine, yeah, you are definitely frozen.
I can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, go right on ahead, Stacy.
Sure. So yeah, I grew up as an athlete. My mom was a collegiate athlete. My mom was going to be an Olympic athlete. So I grew up very seriously in that vein, and that was the only kind of life that I knew, and it was so heavily connected to my identity. I mean, growing up, I really didn't think of myself as a person. I thought of myself as a soccer player and someone that is supposed to accomplish things and win medals and have my, face on Wheaties boxes. I didn't think of myself as a human. Literally, it was about pushing my body and my mind to, the extremes in that case. And that, led me down a road of addiction, and I was diagnosed bipolar as well. And that whole kind of manic mentality, the voice in my head is really that whole lifestyle, the lifestyle that is about pushing and not listening to yourself, and not treating yourself, like a human being, and always drive. And we highlight that in our culture, perfectionism and ambition. These are things that we think of generally as positive traits, and especially as a kid, being an overachiever, that's applauded, and I was one of those people. So no one really talks about the other side of that, which is that it can be very dangerous and ultimately not very effective either, because at some point you're always going to burn out, and at some point you're always going to feel the backlash. And I sure did at an early age, and it really
The weather is just wreaking havoc indeed. Leaving us with a cliffhanger, Stacy and Christine, both of you.
I can hear you, Krishan. Can you hear
You can
me?
hear me? Okay, right. You ended on a cliffhanger and then you froze.
Okay, I'm so sorry. The cliffhanger is, yeah, I mean, sobriety, it gave me a whole new perspective. And I think that we should talk more about that second, that other side of perfectionism.
Well, Stacy, I so appreciate all of your talent, and you've got an incredible story, and we're actually right at time, and it looks like we're having craziness with our internet signals. I absolutely blame the weather, even weather in Hawaii too, Christine.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, so I keep getting logged on and logged off, and yeah, so
It is definitely the weather.
Well, I appreciate it, and having any chance to share my work is, I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And Hope, if you are able to go ahead and put a link in for our upcoming Charlotte Street, and then Stacy, if you want to go ahead and add links where people can find out more about your work, your creativity, you've got some events coming up, feel free to drop those into the chat as well. And I'm going to go ahead and say to our audience who's out
Sure.
and Facebook, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And thank you again, Stacy. Thank you, Christine. Hope.
my pleasure.
Absolutely. And Hope, if you can go ahead and share that slide for our grand finale, Charlotte Street Artist Walks, where we will be featuring Glenisha Johnson, who is the 2020 Visual Artist Award Fellow. That will be Wednesday, August 4th. Be right back here at 6:30 in Zoom and on Facebook Live. We will look forward to seeing you all then, and hopefully with better weather. All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you.